to the panel discussion, and I look forward to having an interesting, enlightening, and a thought-provoking time together. Our topic for today is literature and art in the time of digitalization. What we will be looking at in the next couple of minutes will be how has the age of the computer, how has the internet, how have all the devices that are constantly in our hand, how have all of these taken away the space that should have been allotted to art, literature, music, and indeed all forms of performing arts. And so I'm so thankful to our young anchor who introduced our panelists this morning, but I'd like to say a little more than what she has just said about each one of them. So let me begin with our chief guest for this morning, Mr. Savio Mascarenhas. He is creative director of Amar Chitra Katha, an illustrator and a storyteller. There is no adult in this room who has grown up without reading Amar Chitra Katha. In fact, most of us will say that everything that I know about Indian mythology, everything that I know about Indian history has not come out of a textbook, has not come out of the classroom, but has come out of our reading of Amar Chitra Katha. And so I'm so grateful to meet Amar Chitra Katha in person. Welcome to this panel, sir. I am really, really happy also that sir spoke about how people of my generation thought comics was a bad thing, and that comics misled you and took you away from literature. And I want to stand here as an old teacher, as a very old teacher, to say that no, it is because we have read comics that we have gone on to reading other forms of literature. So comics should never, ever have been banned. Today, some of the best graphic novels, award-winning novels, have been based on drawing and thought balloons. And that really introduced me as a child to the world of Amar Chitra Katha. So welcome, sir. My next panelist is Ms. Swati Bhattacharjee. She's a senior journalist, researcher, and storyteller. And ma'am is in a little bit of a hurry because she's got, in fact all of them are, they have other workshops to get on to. So I'm going to introduce her as somebody who's worked with the Telegraph and the Anandabazar Patrika. She has led a team of 135 reporters. She's a Fulbright fellow. She holds a PhD from TIS and an MSc from the University of Stirling, an MA from Jadavpur University. She has received multiple fellowships and awards, and there are a whole list of them. Today she will be conducting storytelling with our children. I can't tell you how envious I am of the children of FILIX to have people like her come and interact with them and tell them stories. Welcome, ma'am. Next on the panel is Karpha. Till last evening, I didn't know one could have elocution as a career. Thank you for proving me wrong. I almost grilled him. I did an interrogation. How does this even happen? How have you trained? What did you do? How did you even come to this point? And I hope that in the course of this time that we have together, Shama will enlighten us about how he left chemistry to pursue elocution. You're a brave man. He has performed all over the world, and he continues to captivate audiences. I know he will speak here today, but I look forward to listening to him recite at the evening function. So welcome, sir. Welcome to this. The next person on this panel is my fellow teacher in English, Mr. Manash. He teaches English at the Ramakrishna Mission in Purulia, and I'm so happy to have you here, sir. What will bind us together is our love for the language. And I hate to say last but not the least, but I am proud that yesterday I had the opportunity to meet a luminary in the field of movie making. Ma'am Subha Mollick is a filmmaker, an educator and a media specialist. She is a physics graduate and then went on to take a degree from the Savio Institute of Communications in filmmaking. She taught at Xavier's both Mumbai and Kolkata and at the Asian Academy of Film and Television, the Rabindra Bharati University, I-League, and she also coordinated an online mass communication course under the Ministry of Human Resource. She is currently visiting faculty at the Alia University and McCout. She brings her passion for cinema, storytelling and interdisciplinary learning to Palash. Ma'am, we are honored to have you here. All our panelists. Many of you, and I've had opportunity to share this with the audience, have moved away from what we call traditional careers, traditional subject choices, and have gone on to do very unusual. I have a loud voice, not to worry. Not to worry.
We have the generator.
We school teachers are never ever disturbed when the power is shut on. We just go on. Sir, I will ask you, Mr. Mascarenhas, to describe your path from the time you began your career and realized that you wanted to do something different, if I may say so, to where you are now. Over to you, Mr. Mascarenhas, and do you mind not having a mic?
I hope I'm loud enough. Patience. Never realized that a childhood hobby of mine could ever be my career. My childhood hobby was drawing cartoons, and I neglected that completely, in the sense I never focused or went to an institution which would teach me how to draw. I graduated. Okay, yeah. So I did my post-graduation in advertising and public relations. I worked in an ad agency as a copywriter. And that being my career for, I guess it was for a few years, before I realized that I could make and draw cartoons. And that would actually give me money. When I saw an ad in the newspaper which said that Tinkle, which was my favorite magazine growing up, was looking for a cartoonist, I walked into their office with a bunch of my cartoons. And that was the first time, this is 1991, the first time I ever sold my drawings and got money for it. I did a freelance with Tinkle for a few years. Uncle Pai was very happy. He encouraged me to be an artist, a comic book artist, and 3 years of working as a freelance cartoonist for Tinkle, I realized my vision was getting more clear. Vision of what I really wanted to do. So when it was the 31st of December, the new year of 94, I went in to wish Uncle Pai a happy new year, and I gave him a cake. And he asked me, what are you doing today? And I said, I'm working as a copywriter full-time and I'm freelancing with Tinkle as a cartoonist. He said, what do you like better? Is it writing or drawing? And that moment I said, it is drawing. And he said, then I'll give you a New Year's gift. So my job is my gift. I never gave an application. And I guess that was the day I actually stopped working. Because that was the day I followed what my heart told me to do. So that's where I started my journey as a comic book artist.
Thank you for that. I'll pass this mic on to Ms. Bhattacharjee, who will answer the same question. Tell us a little bit about your path that has led you to till today.
Well, my path has always brought me to the story because when I joined journalism, I was actually much surprised to find that in newsrooms, they say that what is the story? They don't say what is the report, they say what is the story. So briefly, I had also thinking of thought about, taking up literature, studying literature, because we all love to read stories. But I thought that no, I write about facts. So I will get into journalism. And imagine my surprise when in the newsroom I heard that the news editor or the chief reporter is asking every journalist, what is the story? So that means that whether you are talking about the Prime Minister saying something, or the share market falling, or a school program like this, anything that you talk about, why is it a story? It has to be factual, it has to be correct, but most of all, it has to touch people. It has to touch my audience, my reader. আমরা যেমন কথা বলতে শিখে প্রথমেই কি বলি? বাচ্চারা প্রথমেই বলে গল্প বলে, tell me a story. And that interest stays with us, that child stays with us all our lives, and we have to feed that child, that curiosity, that urgency to get from the beginning of an event, a chain of events, to the end. And you have to tell it in a way in which you engage that person, you inform that person, and in some way you also change that person. So, a story for us, for me, is about communication. A story is about a connection, and as journalists we try our best to tell even the most serious facts, happenings, events around us today as stories to which my audience, my reader can relate, can think, oh, this can't be happening. They have to react. They have to say, oh yes, that is what we always wanted. Or they have to say, no, this cannot go on. We have to evoke that emotion, and for that we have to write a story, tell a story.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Children in the audience, I hope that you are listening and learning. I learned just now that even the newspaper report, even an analytical report still tells a story. Thank you so much for sharing. And now over to our young elocutionist, Samyakarpha. Sharma, will you tell us how you came to be where you are now?
Actually, I had a problem of stuttering, যেটাকে আমরা বাংলায় বলি তোতলামো, and in a very young age. And like all other Bengali families, my parents took me to a recitation. Suppose keu gaan shekhe, keu naach shekhe. So my parents took me to a recitation class of Pradoti Bhattacharjee, and I still remember the classes used to happen in the around Saturday evening, 4 p.m. And that time was for my I used to play, I used to cycling. So then I didn't like to go to the recitation class, but Ma forced me to go. And what happened, I don't know. After certain years, I started to love that. এবং ভালোবাসাটা এমন জায়গায় পৌঁছলো যে after certain years I thought, okay, let's choose this as my career. এবং নীরেন্দ্রনাথ চক্রবর্তীর একটা লাইন আছে যে আমি পাহাড় থেকে পড়তে পড়তে তোমাকে ধরে বেঁচে রয়েছি কবিতা। সো এটা আমার জীবনে this is so very much important, এবং এটা আমার কাছে এত বেশি মিনিংফুল। এটা নিশ্চয়ই একটা খুব রিস্কি ক্যারিয়ার, আমি জানি, because any sort of this profession, be it an elocution, be it a music, সবটাই খুব রিস্কি ক্যারিয়ার, এবং কবিতা তো আরো বেশি, কারণ a very small number of people, the audience is very small. Okay, so for that, making it a career is very difficult, but still trying, chesta kore jai. So let's see.
Congratulations and all the best on every attempt you make to become a renowned, you already are, a renowned elocutionist. And I'm so encouraged by the thought that you fought stuttering and you succeeded. I hope some of the children in our audience who struggle with speech will take inspiration from you. And to my fellow English teacher, I will ask you to tell us how you became a teacher and then how you became an English teacher. It will probably be the story of my life, but please.
I'll tell the audience how I came to be a teacher. So when I went to school, we stayed at a hostel. It was this school that I'm speaking of, my school. It had a very open-ended style of learning and teaching. So as we lived at a hostel, we all used to interact with our fellow students all the time. So we kept learning from each other all the time, both in terms of lessons that are part of the curriculum and otherwise, all sorts of things, right? And then time went by, I grew up. Then a point came in my life when I needed to figure out how to earn money, because that happens. And then I found that something that I know, I found out that this was a skill. I had never thought about it in that way. I just thought that this is how things were. That you talk to people and you pick things up, and people talk to you and you learn things together. Then I realized that this is exactly the kind of things they're going to pay me for if I become a teacher. And then this is how it happened. And I also found that it's a very useful and wise thing to do, to never accept deep in your heart that you are a teacher. Just keep thinking that you are here on the ride with everyone else. That works out very well.
Thank you, sir. But why an English teacher, a teacher of English? Why did you choose English to teach rather than something else?
I grew up reading storybooks in Bangla and in English. And then, like they say in physics, I followed the path of least resistance. And this is where I turned out.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And now we move on to how you turned away from being a physicist and became a filmmaker.
To begin with, I didn't really turn away from being a physicist, but I was bitten by the film bug at a very early age in my childhood. And perhaps if you are bitten by the film bug, then you have had it. You are doomed. I mean, film is such an addictive thing.
Absolutely.
Now, the person because of whom I was bitten by the film bug is my father.
Oh.
So he was also a cinephile, lover of movies. He was one of the founder members of Calcutta Film Society along with Satyajit Ray and Chiralal Dasgupta and all. So he used to take me to the film festivals and show me films that would otherwise perhaps not be released in the movie halls, and then we have discussions of various etc. But then my father also never thought of being a filmmaker. And he was a lover of cinema. He loved reading about films and watching films and talking about films. Never filmmaker, because those days filmmaking was a very elitist kind of work. Everybody could dream of being a filmmaker. So I also never thought of being a filmmaker as such. But then this countrywide classroom started in Doordarshan after National Network. This countrywide classroom, which is make the whole country a classroom, use this audiovisual medium, the medium of television, to impart education, make it interesting and so on. So at that time I was in Bombay and there were quite a few workshops for interested teachers that how to make educational films. So that was the beginning. So actually my career began by making educational films, strictly educational films, which were aired on the countrywide classroom, then later on in other channels also. From there I graduated to documentaries, and I did not make feature films. When people say filmmaker, so everybody thinks that it's somebody who deals with stars and belongs to a different world. So I never dreamed of making films which will be commercially released or which will be using stars, etc. One of the reasons is that I can't handle star tantrums. So I stick to making documentaries and educational films, and I try to do it to the best of my ability.
Can you name a documentary film that you have made so that all of us can go back and watch it on YouTube or something?
The one that is easily available on YouTube, that is called Music of Rejuvenation. In Bengali it is Nabojagoroner Gan, in English it is Music of Rejuvenation.
Music of?
Music of
The
Rejuvenation.
music of rejuvenation.
Yeah, so that is available in the Hindustan Records YouTube channel. Another one which has really become popular, that's why I said I never left physics actually. So that is in my YouTube channel, which is Dear Master. So this Dear Master is about the relationship between Satyendranath Bose and Einstein.
Oh.
And last year was the centenary year of Bose-Einstein statistics. So this film was officially released on 1st of January 2020. The 1st of January is Satyendranath Bose's birthday. So it was officially released, and after 2024 I gave it on YouTube, and it has really, this film has been most, from all my documentary films, I think this has been the most watched and talked about film. Dear Master, that is very easily.
So teachers in the audience, remember, Dear Master, a good opportunity to introduce our pupils to some good films. I need to know, ma'am, where censorship is important and where it limits creativity. How do we combat, should we combat? But this is not one question, I'm sorry, there's so many coming out of this one. But should we combat, should we fight censorship and go for creative, or is there a middle path that we can take? Over to you, ma'am.
Yeah, the thing is that this is a very debated topic, and censorship, we have this censor board. Normally it is a censor board, actually it is a national board for film certification. So every film that has to be commercially released or shown publicly has to pass through this national board of film certification and get a certificate. It has been seen by a panel and it is approved. So without that you can't enter it in the national festival organized by the government, or it can't go to Indian panorama, or it can't be commercially released, it can't be. But if a film does not have that certificate, then also, because now in that way, this certificate has lost its importance these days, because even without that certificate, you can send it to other festivals, other than the national festival. The film can travel to all festivals all over the world, including Mumbai International Film Festival, which is held every alternate year in Mumbai, which is a government-run festival. But after a very controversial thing, they also have removed this censor certificate thing. And no other festival all over the world has that mandatory has to have that certificate. So the certificate has lost its importance. And then you can put it in the social media, you can put it on YouTube, definitely does not need a censor certificate. Okay, so that way censor certificate has lost its importance. You can easily bypass the censor certificate if you decide that, okay, my film is a documentary film, it will not be commercially released in India, so how do I care? Okay, or I will skip the national festival, I will put it in the competition section. There are so many other avenues, how do I care? So you can always bypass that.
What are the dangers of doing that? If there's no cap, there's no controlling authority.
See, danger means if you put it on YouTube, YouTube has its own regulatory mechanism. Okay, if it is a paid film or anything, YouTube will ban. If media rights from other sources, YouTube will ban. So YouTube has its own regulatory mechanism at work. Alright? So that is there. Then other festivals also will not accept, because that also passes through people committee. So if a film is really objectionable in that sense, then other festival authority also will not accept. Okay. But why people are against the censor board, like NANRITAM, that is one of the renowned documentary filmmakers in India, every film of NANRITAM, you have to fight with the censor board, because it speaks against the ruling authority. And the review committee can say, okay, you cut off this portion, you leave this portion, and NANRITAM doesn't want to do that. So he has a fight with the censor for every film that he has made. So, a new genre has come up. There is a festival also for People's Film Festival, which is cinema of resistance. There are many types of, there are comedies, there are action films, there are musical films. So like that, a new genre has come up called cinema of resistance. And we have a festival called People's Film Festival, which shows only cinema of resistance. So cinema of resistance means what? That is how people are resisting against an authoritarian rule, how people are resisting against an unfair law, and how they are surviving and continuing to resist in spite of all opposition. Films are about that, and many of those films do not have a chance of passing the censor board, but they don't care either for their other avenues.
Thank you so much, and that was so enlightening.
The thought of our Chitragatha came that we need to tell the stories of India. There's always a limitation to how much can we tell and what can we tell you. There's a limitation of the number of pages. There's a limitation of the source of the story. Now in a 32-pager, if I have to tell you the story of Krishna, how much can I get into the details of it? If I have to tell the story of the Gita, how much of details can I tell you? If I have to tell a story to an 8-year-old child, how much should I get into the details of it? So that is the question that we at our Chitragatha think a lot about. So when we say that we tell you the stories of India, it's not only about the mythology, it's not only about the history, it's about the culture, it's about the traditions of India. We recently did a lecture on the tribal freedom fighters of India. Now that's a story which has never been heard of. That's a story that the children would want to know about. And like I said, there will always be the positive side to a story and the negative side to a story. But what we do as a responsible publisher is we tell you the story from the source that we have picked up. We tell you the story in the most simplified way. But later on, it is for you to go out and explore and find out more. Today there will be a lot of controversies about characters that you would know from history, from the freedom struggle. There will be so many of them that will be debatable today. But you have to give it to us the benefit of, rather excuse us for, at the times when these books were written, there was very little source material from where we were writing. This is the 60s and the 70s. Today it's much easier to tell us that this particular part in history is wrong, because we have a lot of information out there which will give you the positive and the negative sides of every character, every personality in Indian history or in Indian mythology. There are so many versions of the Ramayana, so many versions of the Mahabharata, and everything is debatable. Like I said, we are storytellers, but we would just touch on the tip of the iceberg. The rest is for the readers to find out more about everything that they read. And we are not saying that whatever we print out there is a gospel truth. It is the way we have seen a particular story, and I don't think we really lean towards any of the philosophies that would be predominant. Our storytelling is very simple. Over the years, like I said, we have been neutral in our storytelling. We see to it that we don't tell the stories, even if they are the legendary people of India. Even today, we see to it that we keep telling the stories which don't go into any sort of controversy. We don't do political figures who are living, because we never know tomorrow there will be a controversy about them. We don't touch about the subjects which will be controversial, because at the back of our minds we still know that we have to tell a story for an 8-year-old child. We have to tell the story in the most simple way. Of course, as a child or the reader grows, that reader is going to go out and read a lot more, right? So what we do is just the very nascent stage of telling a story. Our stories are well researched. We put in a lot of effort. The team works. Like I said, when we did a title called Paramvir Chakra, we did a research on all the bodies right from the 1948 war against Pakistan coming down to the Kargil war. The research went into almost a year into getting the uniforms right, getting the artillery right, getting everything, the details of the guns, the ammunitions, all that was used during these wars over the years. Only when we had all the research done, we went ahead and created the art. The next title that we are working on is the story of Bangladesh, the formation of Bangladesh and India's contribution towards making Bangladesh. So that again is a lot of research which is going to, that's work in progress for us now, but we take a lot of care. We talk to both the governments in India and in Bangladesh to see that we come out with a book which has got everything right. So I know it will be highly debatable at a point when the book comes out. But like I said, there's always two sides to a story. And we as storytellers would only want to put a story out. The rest is for our readers who I'm sure are much, much intelligent to find out what's right and what's
Thank you so much. Next I will ask, taking off from what Savio said, Swati, I would like to ask you, he very gently shoved the responsibility onto the reader. So I'm going to ask you to take off from there and say, in newspapers, what is the responsibility of the writer of the article and how far can you write without, and I'm going to be, excuse me, without offending? It's very fashionable today to keep offending people. What do you do to keep the newspaper from offending the reader?
It's okay to offend prejudiced people. You just choose who you offend. That is your choice.
Love that. Just choose whom you want to offend. Everybody take note. Choose whom you want to offend.
I will offend the parochial, I will offend the prejudiced, I will offend the patriarch.
Thank you.
That is my job, and I will do it. I will sort of take off.
A round of applause. She certainly deserves that. Yes.
I will take off from what Sir has said just now. It is certainly upon the reader. I also write a 450 word story. An entire day is happening, an entire week is happening, an entire election of a country happening, and I have space for 450 stories. So I know that if a reader really wishes to know well, then he or she should go beyond and read up or watch other stuff. But I also know that if my work is the first work that she is reading or watching, then I am predisposing that person to certain ideas and thoughts. My concept frame will probably be valid for a very long time. Whether she reads more or not, and in case of newspapers, probably 70%, probably 80% will not read anything else than my report. So my responsibility is tremendous. And I have to, even as a storyteller, I write stories for children. Even as a storyteller, I have to constantly question myself because we have a tendency of following stories that we have read. ठाकुर Chudi, Khire Putul, Cinderella, Rajkamini, but we now with our sensitivities after the last 2-3 decades in women's movement, we know how much of it is patriarchal and prejudicial to women. So we all know that all throughout the world, fairy tales are being told again, from being rewritten from the women's point of view. And even Disney is making films like Moana, which has strong, powerful women at the center of the story. So we have to do a lot of searching within. It's not just facts outside, but our own belief systems that we have to question and revise and retell. Every story is also my story,
of evolution. How much I
That's
have
beautiful.
come by now.
Thank you so much. That was so heartening, so uplifting. It's really what we should be talking about today. I'm going to ask you, how far has digitalization helped you in your career? How much of it do you use when you're reciting? And how much technology do you use in your performances?
Without knowing technology in this time, a person is, I can just say that he or she is illiterate. Okay, because without the knowledge of technology, you can't walk a bit still. And COVID has several negativities, but one positive impact of COVID, what I say is that it has made us extremely tech savvy. I can cite an example. Suppose during the time of COVID, all our live concerts stopped. Okay, and I remember that it was in the March, and I had a plan of, rather, I had my concerts in USA during the time of June, July, and other also concerts, international concerts, and all just stopped for those 2 years. But it was a very difficult time for all the musicians, for all the performers. So what then evolved is that digital concert. Okay, so during first 2-3 weeks or for a month, it was around Facebook Live. But then we realized that in Facebook Live, people don't purchase tickets. So how is the revenue getting generated? So then another, you can say another way evolved, where people used to buy tickets and we used to go in a particular studio, or we used to shoot from our own home, from our own setup. And for that reason, we learned how to shoot on ourselves, how to record on ourselves, how to do the basic technological settings and all. So we have learned to become tech savvy. If those people who didn't have that knowledge, they could run in that period. So that was really a loss for them. Many keyboard artists, we used to send them audio tracks, and they used to compose the music in their laptops, in their keyboards, and they used to send us. And we used to record in our home and again send them to the studio where the mixing would have been done. So see, everything is technologically connected. So if we were not technologically connected, then we couldn't have survived. So technology and digitalization is very, very, very important, and particularly in this time, in this era. We should have that knowledge to survive, to exist.
This is a by question from the main question. Today, COVID is over, thankfully. How do you use technology when you are performing live?
Yeah, that's also a very important question. Two aspects of it. Suppose the first thing, as you say, that how it helps me to connect. I'm in Kolkata, and some person who suppose loves Kavita, okay, he or she is in US, UK, whatever. So they can get easily connected with me, with this social media, with this digitalization, number one. And how I use during my performance. I perform Kavita with tracks. Okay, so many of the artists, they have their musicians, they carry some musicians with them, where they play the tracks and he or she performs on stage. What I do is that I play my own track from my stage. Because suppose for a performance, if I charge this and this amount of money, for the musician again I have to charge some extra money. Okay, it's not always possible to have that budget in every aspect. Okay, so I can be my own master. So I'm operating my own tracks, I'm operating my own sound system, and it is very essential to have that knowledge of a performer, how he or she will perform. And because I've seen the Western world also, the artists do everything all themselves. So this is very important to have this idea, this knowledge of technology.
Now I'll ask my fellow English teacher. You face as a teacher of English, and how do you use technology to beat the challenge?
Because one of the major themes of our meet here today is creativity. I think that we teachers are in a very risky and responsible position over here, because as teachers we deal in cliches. Right, the person on my right, if he is an avrittika, I am a punarabrittika. I take the patterns originated by creative people, established by powerful people, and I teach that in the class. I tell myself that I teach it in the class. I don't know what I do. But then, so in our way, we could turn out to be one of the biggest obstacles to creativity if we don't catch ourselves in the act. So that is one thing that I tell myself, that as long as the thing about creativity is, it is creative. It doesn't matter what kind of a technological age we are entering, it's always going to reinvent itself. That is what it does. So there is no risk over there. We have to keep our eye on the ball and remember that it's always rolling. Yesterday's standards may not apply, and in some cases should not apply today. Say in the case of comic books, Yellow Kid from the World War days, we can't take that standard and apply it to what's happening today. Right? So that is one thing. I'm sure I'm missing out on a number of things. I rely on you to bring me back to the track. And as an English teacher, let's lump literature together with art here. Because art and literature, that is I think, the single most important force in humanity that speaks truth to power. Right. So, and look at my position over here. I can see students, right, and as a teacher, I am constantly exploiting my position of power in respect to you when I am in the classroom. So this is a very self-contradictory role. I am trying to teach you how to do things by yourselves, by not letting you do things by yourselves. It's very tricky. It is tricky. It's challenging. If I don't catch myself in this act, I'm going to make a fool of myself. People might not say so because I have power.
That was absolutely brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Friends, I can do this for another hour, but each of you have separate workshops to go on to.
A brilliant session. I think again, couple of things I was sitting there reflecting. Actually, these days, this kind of panel has become very rare. Sometimes the younger students, what if you go to the television in the evening, you see some kind of cacophony of stupidity. So this kind of open discussion, expressing opinion, understanding each other, even disagreeing, putting your points, this has become a rare thing. So this itself, I know younger students who may or may not realize everything being discussed, but this itself is a phenomenon. A couple of discussion came so wonderfully. Had it been anywhere else, there would be immediately some kind of bartending would start and everybody would start name calling would start. The entire world of literatures and that culture has somehow become a place where people are not expressing themselves openly. And this is not just a Bengal phenomenon today, it's the entire world is getting to a very difficult time. So I'll end it. It was a wonderful session with two lines of my favorite poet, Shankhosh. দু চোখ ভরে দেখতে দিন পাল্লাদিন, আমরা সবাই ব্যক্তি এবং স্বাধীন, আকাশ থেকে জোলা গাছের উড়ে. So that's the real content.